So I'm going to create a new removable storage protection rule. Call it RSPR. And this time, what I'm going to do is set, again, a very generic rule to monitor all data to USB devices. And we'll edit that one. You'll notice there are several steps along the way here. This first step allows me to look at just particular applications. So for instance, you may have a database application that you use that accesses sensitive data on a regular basis, and you may want to only monitor that application when it writes to USB devices. And I could define that as an application. I could define any application that I want to as an application in here, include that in this particular rule. I'm not going to do that in this step. The next step is I can look at, again, particular types of data. So I can look at data based off of classifications that I can create on my own. We have a number of classifications built in for things like social security numbers, medical terms, credit card numbers, both patterns as well as phrases are built into the product. And I could certainly look at the data and analyze the actual data itself and check for those things. But again, I'm going to build a very generic rule here, so I'm going to skip this step as well. The next two steps, steps 3 and 4, allow me to look at the files based on the type of file. So this one allows me to look at the binary file type. Step 4 allows me to look at just the extension and do kind of an easier match. Again, I'm going to ignore both of those. The document property definitions allow me to look at the metadata for a file, and you'll notice the options that I have available here. Again, I'm going to skip it and just set a very generic rule. And then, of course, I come to my options once again. Very similar to what we saw before with the options. So maybe if I had checked on that the classification step that I had selected that I want to look at all Social Security number documents, anything containing a Social Security number, maybe I want to block those from going to removable storage. Or maybe I want to encrypt them. This integrates with the McAfee file and folder encryption so that anything that would have, in this particular example, that had a Social Security number would be encrypted. In this case, I just want to monitor everything that's being copied to a USB device. So I want to get a list of all the file names, how many files and that sort of thing are being copied to my USB devices. So I'm going to set a monitor rule. You notice we have the option to notify users. We also have an interesting option here to store evidence. What that allows me to do is actually get a copy of the files that are being stored to the USB device. Probably not a good thing if you're going to look at every file being copied to USB, but if you're interested only in particularly sensitive files, maybe you want to have a copy of the file. The other option you have with evidence is to only store the matching text. So if I was interested in Social Security numbers and I was just storing the hits, this would store, instead of the entire file, just a small file that would tell me what patterns we saw in the file that matched this particular rule. But again, I'm going to turn that off and leave that off in this particular rule and just monitor those files. And then finally, again, I can choose to apply this rule selectively to certain users if I wish to do that as well. I'm going to apply this once again to everyone, including local users. I'm going to enable this rule. And again, I'm going to apply it to EPO. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually, you'll notice the status monitor here, applying those policies and enforcing the policies. I'm going to open up here. This gem stick is the actual stick itself, and I'm going to copy a couple files to it off of my desktop. So I'll just pick 3 that are relatively small and copy them over to my stick. Right. Again, this is an approved device, so I have access to write to these. Here's the 3 files that I just copied over. Once again, I'll come back to my DLP, to my EPO screen, go back to my DLP monitor, and we'll take a look at the events coming in. Right, so there's our DLP removable storage protection rules. And again, I can see the files being copied over to this USB stick. Finally, the DLP monitor is a nice way of looking at events. And this gives me kind of a real-time view. I can, sort these events in different ways. And take a look at and filters and all those types of things, but it's really not a great long-term reporting tool. So what we have in EPO is a full dashboard and query system. So within the dashboards themselves, there are some that are pre-built, for instance, a DLP status screen with some very simple reports that I can pull up and show here. but I can also come in and I can build reports on the fly using EPO. So if I come down here under my shared groups, I have a data loss prevention group, and you can see the types of canned reports that we build in with the product. Right, and just some sample canned reports there. Here's a, let's do an event by event type. Right, and we can see there were 15 device plugs, 2,700 removable storage protection rules. Right, this goes back obviously some time, which is why there's a large number of them in here. But I can see those types of events, and then I can also build reports on my own using EPO's built-in query tool. So if I wanted to see DLP specific information, come in here, select DLP events, and then I can slice and dice the information any way I want into any sort of pretty bar chart or pie chart or line chart or simple table that might make the most sense to me, and produce that report. All these reports can be scheduled. Any of these reports could become a dashboard on that front screen when I first log into EPO. Any of these things could be scheduled so that I get a weekly report or a monthly report sent to management. All those options are built into the ePolicy Orchestrator console. So I hope that gives you an idea of the power of the McAfee device control product. Again, the full host DLP product gives you some additional options in terms of protecting data and looking at additional data protection vectors. And so I hope you'll take a look at that as well. Thank you for your time and have a great day.